Stray German shepherd lay motionless, collapsed in the backyard. Baby's reaction. Left. Everyone in tears. The story you're about to listen will touch your heart and leave you in tears. What happened will shock you. If this touches your heart, make sure to like, share, and let us know where you're listening from in the comments below. Rain lashed against the windows of the Parker family home like angry fists demanding entry. The October sky had darkened hours earlier than usual, turning the afternoon into an eerie twilight. Lightning flashed, illuminating the backyard for brief, ghostly seconds before plunging it back into shadow. Thunder followed, rumbling so deeply that the china in the kitchen cabinets rattled in response. Inside, Mia Parker stirred a pot of tomato soup on the stove, the comforting aroma filling the kitchen with warmth that contradicted the violent storm outside. She glanced nervously at the windows as another flash of lightning lit up the sky, followed by a boom of thunder that seemed to shake the very foundation of their home. "That was a close one," she called to her husband Ethan, who was setting the table. "Do you think we should check the basement for leaks?" Ethan shrugged, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled reassuringly at his wife. "The sump pump is working. We should be fine as long as the power stays on." In the adjoining living room, their 5-year-old son, Noah, sat cross-legged on the carpet, surrounded by his collection of toy animals. Unlike most children his age, Noah wasn't afraid of storms. In fact, he seemed fascinated by them. His small fingers arranged the plastic figurines in a semicircle, as if they were watching the storm together through the glass sliding door that led to the backyard. "Lion says the rain is angry today," Noah announced solemnly, holding up a slightly chewed plastic lion. "But Bear says it's just crying." Mia smiled at her son's imagination. "And what does Noah say?" The boy tilted his head, considering the question seriously. "Noah says—" He stopped mid-sentence, his gaze suddenly fixed on something beyond the glass door. His small body went rigid, his eyes widening. "Mommy," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the rain pounding against the roof. "Someone is outside." Mia didn't look up immediately, focused on stirring the soup to prevent it from sticking to the bottom of the pot. "It's just the storm, sweetie. The wind is making the trees move." But Noah had already abandoned his toys and pressed his face against the glass door, his breath fogging the surface. "No, Mommy, look!" His voice had risen with urgency, tinged with something Mia rarely heard in her son's voice: fear. "Noah, please don't press your face against the glass like that. You'll leave smudges," Mia said absently, setting the wooden spoon down and wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. "But Mommy—" Noah's voice had now taken on a desperate edge. He ran to Mia and tugged urgently at the hem of her sweater. "Please, Mommy, look! Someone needs help." There was something in her son's tone that finally caught Mia's full attention. She sighed and allowed herself to be pulled toward the glass door. "Okay, let's see what's got you so—" The words died in her throat as lightning flashed again, illuminating their sodden backyard, and the large, dark shape lying motionless near their garden shed. Mia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Ethan!" she called, her voice unsteady. "Ethan, come here." Ethan appeared beside her, his expression shifting from mild annoyance to concern as he followed her gaze. "What is that?" Another flash of lightning revealed the unmistakable form of a dog, a large one, lying on its side in the mud, rain pelting its dark fur. It wasn't moving. "It's a doggy," Noah whispered, his small hands pressed against the glass, his eyes huge with concern. "And he's hurt, Mommy. He's dying." The last word hung in the air, heavy with childish certainty. Mia exchanged a glance with Ethan, whose face had hardened with caution. "Stay inside with Noah," Ethan said, moving toward the door that led to the garage. "I'll go check it out." "Be careful," Mia warned, wrapping her arms around Noah, who had begun to tremble. Ethan grabbed a flashlight from the drawer and his rain jacket from the hook by the door. He hesitated, then reached for the baseball bat they kept in the umbrella stand. Mia raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Better safe than sorry. The moment Ethan stepped outside, the wind and rain assaulted him with surprising force. He hunched his shoulders against the onslaught and made his way carefully across the slippery yard, the beam of his flashlight bouncing wildly with each step. Inside, Mia and Noah watched anxiously as Ethan approached the fallen animal. The flashlight beam steadied as he crouched beside it, and even through the rain-streaked glass, Mia could see her husband's posture change. He set the bat down and placed a hand gently on the dog's side. Noah suddenly burst into tears, loud, heartbroken sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside his small body. "He's dying, Mommy! He's dying!" he wailed, burying his face against Mia's leg. Outside, Ethan looked back toward the house, his face pale in the beam of the flashlight. He made an urgent beckoning gesture with his free hand. "Stay here, Noah," Mia said firmly, gently disengaging herself from her son's grip. "I need to help Daddy." "I want to help too," Noah protested, tears streaming down his face. "The best way you can help is to stay inside where it's dry," Mia said, grabbing her own rain jacket. "We'll bring the doggy inside, okay?" Noah nodded reluctantly, his lower lip trembling. Mia dashed out into the storm, the rain immediately soaking through her jeans despite the protection of her jacket. She splashed across the yard, nearly slipping in the mud as she reached Ethan and the fallen dog. Up close, the animal was even more heartbreaking. It was a German shepherd, once powerful, but now terribly thin, its ribs visible even through its thick, wet fur. Its eyes were closed, and its breathing came in labored, shallow pants. "Is it alive?" Mia asked, having to raise her voice over the storm. Ethan nodded grimly. "Barely, but Mia—" He gently rolled the dog slightly, revealing a deep, jagged wound on its side. Blood mixed with rainwater, creating pale pink rivulets in the mud. "Someone did this. This isn't an accident or an animal attack. This looks like a knife wound," Mia finished, horror dawning on her face. "Someone stabbed him and left him to die." The realization hung between them, more chilling than the rain soaking through their clothes. Who would do such a thing? And why had the wounded animal ended up in their backyard, of all places? Lightning cracked overhead, followed immediately by a boom of thunder that seemed to shake the ground beneath them. The dog's eyes flew open, amber, clouded with pain, but surprisingly alert. It made no attempt to move, just watched them with an unsettling intelligence. "We need to get him inside," Mia decided, her maternal instincts overriding any caution. "He'll die out here." "Mia, we don't know anything about this dog," Ethan protested, though his hand remained gentle on the animal's sodden fur. "It could be dangerous. Think about Noah. Look at him, Ethan. He can barely breathe, let alone attack anyone." Mia was already shrugging off her jacket. "Help me wrap him in this. We can't just leave him out here to die." Ethan hesitated, his face a battlefield of conflicting emotions, compassion warring with caution, his instinct to protect his family clashing with the undeniable suffering of the creature before them. "Fine," he relented finally, "but we keep him away from Noah until we know more." Together, they carefully wrapped the jacket around the wounded dog, who made no sound despite what must have been excruciating pain as they moved him. The animal's eyes remained fixed on them, watching, assessing. "He's so light," Ethan murmured as he lifted the dog into his arms. "He should weigh twice this much." Mia led the way back to the house, opening the door for Ethan, who carried his burden with careful steps. Noah was waiting just inside, clutching his stuffed dog to his chest, his eyes huge with fear and hope. "Is he okay?" he asked in a small voice. "Is the doggy going to live?" Mia exchanged a glance with Ethan over the dog's head. "How do you explain to a 5-year-old that someone had tried to murder this animal?" "He's very sick, sweetheart," she said gently, "but we're going to try to help him." "Where should I put him?" Ethan asked, water dripping from his clothes onto the tile floor of the entryway. "The guest bathroom," Mia decided. "We can clean him up in the tub, and there's nothing in there he can hurt himself on." But Noah had already disappeared into the living room. He returned dragging his favorite blanket, a soft blue fleece with rockets and stars that his grandmother had made for him when he was born. "For the doggy," he said solemnly, holding it out. "So he can be warm." Mia opened her mouth to explain that the blanket would get ruined, but the look of earnest concern on her son's face stopped her. "That's very kind of you, Noah," she said instead. "I think the living room would be better than the bathroom. We can put the blanket down on the floor." Noah beamed and hurried to spread his precious blanket in the middle of the living room floor. Ethan followed, carefully laying the wounded animal down. The dog's amber eyes flickered around the room, taking in the new surroundings with an alertness that belied its physical condition. "I'll get some towels and warm water," Mia said, heading for the linen closet. "And the first aid kit." Noah knelt beside the dog, seemingly unafraid despite the animal's size and unknown temperament. "You're safe now," he whispered, his small hand hovering just above the dog's wet fur, not quite touching. "You found us." The dog's eyes fixed on Noah with an intensity that would have unnerved most adults. But Noah just smiled, a soft, knowing smile that seemed oddly mature on his childish face. When Mia returned with an armful of towels and the first aid kit, she found Noah still kneeling beside the dog, now gently stroking its head. The dog's eyes were half closed, and incredibly its tail thumped weakly against the blanket. "Noah, be careful," Mia cautioned, setting down her supplies. "We don't know if—" "He likes me," Noah said with absolute certainty. "He's not scared of me." Ethan appeared with a bowl of warm water and a pile of clean rags. "Let's get him cleaned up and see how bad that wound is," he said, still sounding reluctant but resigned to the situation. As they gently cleaned the mud and blood from the dog's fur, the full extent of the animal's condition became clear. It wasn't just thin, it was emaciated, as if it hadn't eaten properly in weeks. Its coat was dull and matted in places, and beneath the filth, they discovered numerous old scars crisscrossing its body. "This dog has been through hell," Ethan murmured, carefully cleaning around the fresh wound on the animal's side. "These old scars, it looks like he's been in fights, or maybe even abused." "No collar," Mia noted, examining the dog's neck. "But he's definitely been someone's pet. Look how he responds to human touch. And his ears—" She gently touched one of the dog's ears, which was jaggedly torn. This didn't happen naturally. Throughout their ministrations, the dog remained still, only flinching slightly when Ethan cleaned the knife wound. Its eyes remained alert, moving between them as if following their conversation. "We should call animal control," Ethan said quietly, trying not to let Noah overhear. "They can take him to a shelter where he'll get proper care." "No!" Noah cried, proving that his hearing was excellent. "They'll put him to sleep. That's what they do to hurt dogs." "Noah, that's not—" Mia began, but stopped, because her son wasn't entirely wrong. A severely wounded dog with possible behavior issues from abuse might indeed be euthanized rather than treated. "We'll call a vet," she amended. "Dr. Miller has an emergency service. Maybe she can come here. Or at least advise us over the phone," Ethan agreed, applying an antiseptic spray to the wound that made the dog twitch, but still not growl or snap. "This cut needs stitches, but it's not as deep as I feared. If we can stop the bleeding and prevent infection, he might have a chance." Noah had crawled closer to the dog's head and was now whispering something into its ear. The dog's tail thumped again, a bit stronger this time. "What are you telling him, sweetie?" Mia asked, touched by her son's compassion. "His name," Noah replied simply. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And how do you know his name?" Noah shrugged, the gesture somehow both childish and oddly adult. "He told me." Mia and Ethan exchanged a look over their son's head, the look parents share when their child says something both cute and slightly concerning. "And what is his name?" Mia asked gently. Noah looked down at the dog, who stared back at him with those intelligent amber eyes. "Bruno," he said with certainty. "His name is Bruno." As if in confirmation, the dog's tail thumped once more against the blanket. "Well then," Ethan said, carefully wrapping a clean bandage around the dog's middle to cover the wound. "Nice to meet you, Bruno. Though I wish it were under better circumstances." Bruno's eyes shifted to Ethan, and for a moment, Mia could have sworn the dog understood every word. While Ethan continued tending to Bruno's wound, Mia stepped into the kitchen to call the emergency vet service. Dr. Miller wasn't available, but her associate agreed to consult over a video call. After examining Bruno through the screen and hearing about his condition, the vet prescribed antibiotics and painkillers, which fortunately they could pick up at an all-night pharmacy. "Keep the wound clean, keep him warm and quiet, and try to get him to drink some water," the vet advised. "If he makes it through the night, bring him in first thing tomorrow. But I have to warn you, given his condition, his chances aren't good." Mia thanked her and ended the call, turning to find Noah standing in the doorway, his face solemn. "Is Bruno going to die?" he asked directly, with that unnerving perception children sometimes have. Mia knelt down to his level. "The doctor says he's very sick, but we're going to do everything we can to help him. That's why Daddy's going to go get some medicine for him." Noah nodded as if this were exactly what he expected. "He's not going to die," he said with absolute conviction. "He came to us because he knew we would save him." "Oh, sweetie," Mia began, not wanting to encourage false hope. "He's special, Mommy," Noah interrupted, his eyes intense. "He's not like other dogs. He knows things." A chill ran down Mia's spine that had nothing to do with her damp clothes. There was something about the way Noah spoke, a certainty beyond his years, that unsettled her. Before she could respond, Ethan appeared, car keys in hand. "I'll run to the pharmacy," he said. "Noah, buddy, why don't you help Mommy set up a comfortable place for Bruno to sleep tonight?" Noah shook his head firmly. "Bruno is sleeping with me, in my room." "Noah, that's not a good idea," Mia said gently. "Bruno is very sick, and we don't know—" "He needs me," Noah insisted, his lower lip jutting out stubbornly. "He's scared of the dark, and the bad man might come back." Another chill, stronger this time. "What bad man, Noah?" Mia asked carefully. Noah looked at her as if she'd asked a silly question. "The one who hurt Bruno, of course. The one Bruno was running away from." Ethan and Mia exchanged another concerned glance. "Did Bruno tell you that too?" Ethan asked, his tone light but his eyes serious. Noah nodded solemnly. "He shows me pictures in my head." Mia felt a flutter of panic. Was her son having some kind of episode? Or was this just an overactive imagination combined with natural empathy for an injured animal? "Well," Ethan said after a moment, "Bruno is going to stay right here in the living room tonight where we can keep an eye on him, and I'm going to go get his medicine now." He kissed Mia quickly. "Lock the doors behind me, okay?" The comment seemed odd. They always locked the doors, until Mia realized it was a response to Noah's talk of bad men. Ethan wasn't taking any chances, even if the threat existed only in their son's imagination. After Ethan left, Mia tried to coax Noah to eat some dinner, but he refused to leave Bruno's side. "He's hungry too," Noah insisted. "Can I give him some soup?" "Soup isn't good for dogs, sweetie," Mia explained. "And Bruno might not be able to eat solid food right now. Let's try some water first." She brought a shallow bowl of water and placed it near Bruno's head. The dog eyed it, then looked at Noah as if seeking permission. "It's okay," Noah said softly. "You can drink it. It's safe." To Mia's surprise, Bruno lifted his head weakly and lapped at the water, just a little before laying his head back down, exhausted by even that small effort. "Good boy," Noah whispered, stroking Bruno's head gently. "You need to get strong again." Mia watched her son with the dog, amazed at the connection that had formed so quickly between them. Noah had always loved animals, but this was different, a bond that seemed to run deeper than simple childhood affection. She went to the window, pulling back the curtain to peer out at the storm, which had subsided slightly but still raged. The yard was dark except when illuminated by flashes of lightning, the trees bending in the wind. Had Bruno really crawled all the way here, wounded and weak, to collapse in their specific backyard? Out of all the houses in their neighborhood, why theirs? For that matter, where had he come from? And who had stabbed him? The questions swirled in her mind, unsettling and persistent. When she turned back, she found Noah had curled up on the floor beside Bruno, his small body nestled against the dog's less injured side, his head resting gently on the dog's shoulder. To her astonishment, Bruno had shifted slightly, his body curving protectively around the boy. Mia should have insisted that Noah move away. It wasn't safe, no matter how docile the dog seemed. But there was something about the tableau before her that stopped the words in her throat. They looked right together, as if they'd known each other forever. "Mommy," Noah said without opening his eyes. "Bruno says thank you for saving him." Mia swallowed hard. "You're welcome, Bruno," she said softly, and she could have sworn the dog nodded slightly in response. The sound of Ethan's car pulling into the driveway broke the strange spell. Mia hurried to unlock the door, relieved to have her husband home. The storm was making her jumpy, that was all. And Noah's talk of bad men and dogs that spoke to him. It was just childish imagination, fueled by the drama of finding an injured animal, wasn't it? Ethan came in, shaking rain from his jacket. "Got the medicine?" he announced, holding up a small pharmacy bag. "How's our patient?" "See for yourself," Mia said, gesturing toward the living room where Noah and Bruno remained curled together. Ethan's expression softened at the sight, then grew concerned. "Mia, I'm not sure." "I know," she interrupted. But look at them, Ethan. Have you ever seen Noah bond with anyone or anything that quickly? It was true. Their son was generally reserved with strangers, whether human or animal, taking time to warm up. Yet here he was, sleeping peacefully beside a dog they had found barely an hour ago. Still, Ethan said, though his voice had lost its edge of concern, we should be careful. We don't know anything about this dog. Except that his name is Bruno, Mia said with a small smile, and apparently he talks to Noah in his head. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What? Mia explained Noah's comments about Bruno showing him pictures and telling him about the bad man. Ethan frowned, his parental concern evident. It's just his imagination, Mia assured him, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. He's a sensitive child, and finding an injured dog was traumatic. His mind is trying to make sense of it. Maybe, Ethan conceded, but he looked troubled. Let's get these meds into Bruno. The vet said they should help with the pain and fight any infection. Together, they managed to coax the pills into Bruno, wrapped in a small piece of cheese that the dog accepted delicately from Noah's hand. Throughout the process, Bruno's amber eyes remained fixed on them, watching, evaluating. It was uncanny, Mia thought, how human those eyes seemed, filled with intelligence and something else she couldn't quite name. Sadness, determination. Why don't you take Noah up to bed? Ethan suggested once they'd finished. I'll stay down here with Bruno in case he needs anything during the night. Mia nodded, gently rousing Noah, who protested sleepily. Bruno needs to rest, sweetie, and so do you. We can check on him first thing in the morning. But what if the bad man comes? Noah asked, suddenly alert, his eyes wide with fear. What if he finds Bruno? There's no bad man, Noah, Mia said firmly. Bruno is safe here with us. Noah looked unconvinced. He's scared, he insisted. He doesn't want to be alone. Ethan knelt beside his son. Bruno won't be alone, buddy. I'm going to stay right here with him all night. I promise I won't let anything happen to him. Noah studied his father's face intently, then nodded slowly. Okay, but if he gets scared, you have to come get me. Promise? I promise, Ethan said solemnly. Noah leaned down and whispered something in Bruno's ear before allowing Mia to lead him upstairs. As they left, Mia glanced back to see Bruno's eyes following them, alert despite his exhaustion, as if he was memorizing exactly where they were going. Later, after Noah was finally asleep in his own bed, Mia rejoined Ethan in the living room. She found him sitting on the couch, staring at Bruno with a perplexed expression. What is it? She asked, sitting beside him. I don't know, Ethan admitted. There's something about this dog, the way he watches us. It's like he's assessing us. Mia nodded. I noticed that too. It's a bit unnerving. And there's something else. Ethan lowered his voice, though Noah was asleep upstairs and couldn't possibly hear them. When you took Noah up to bed, I could have sworn Bruno was counting. He looked at each of us, then at the stairs, as if he was making sure everyone was accounted for. That's odd, Mia said slowly. And when I got up to get some water, he watched me the entire time. Not in a threatening way, but like he was on guard, like he was, I don't know, protecting the house or something. Mia thought about what Noah had said, that Bruno was special, that he knew things. Maybe he was a service dog or a police dog, she suggested. That would explain his training and intelligence. Maybe, Ethan agreed, but he didn't sound convinced. But it doesn't explain why he ended up stabbed in our backyard, or why Noah is so sure someone is after him. Mia had no answer for that. They sat in silence for a while, watching Bruno doze fitfully, his legs occasionally twitching as if he were running in his dreams, or perhaps running away from something. We'll take him to the vet in the morning, Mia said at last. Maybe they can scan for a microchip, find out who he belongs to. Ethan nodded, but his expression remained troubled. And if they can't? Or if his owner is the one who did this to him? Mia looked at Bruno, at his scarred body and torn ears, at the fresh wound that someone had deliberately inflicted. Then, I guess we have a dog, she said simply. Ethan smiled slightly and put his arm around her. Noah would love that. So would you, Mia countered, nudging him playfully. Don't think I haven't noticed you sneaking treats to the Wilsons' dog when we visit. Maybe, Ethan admitted, but a dog is a big responsibility. So is saving a life, Mia said softly, her gaze returning to Bruno. And I think that's what we're doing here, Ethan. I really do. They decided to take turns keeping watch over Bruno through the night. Ethan took the first shift while Mia tried to get some sleep, but despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her. Her mind kept returning to the image of Bruno lying motionless in their backyard, to the knife wound in his side, to Noah's certainty that someone bad was after the dog. It seemed impossible, absurd even, that there could be any real danger. And yet, there was a nagging sense of unease that she couldn't shake, a feeling that by bringing Bruno into their home, they had somehow involved themselves in something larger and potentially dangerous. Just imagination, she told herself firmly. Too many thriller movies, too many crime shows on TV. There was a simple, rational explanation for everything. A stray dog, injured in a fight, or by an irresponsible owner who happened to wander into their yard. Nothing more. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, Mia couldn't quite silence the small voice in the back of her mind that whispered, "Then why does it feel like we're being watched?" Morning light filtered softly through the curtains when Mia finally made her way downstairs. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind a strange stillness, as if the world was holding its breath. She found Ethan dozing on the couch, his head tilted at an uncomfortable angle. On the floor, Bruno lay on Noah's blanket, his amber eyes immediately fixing on Mia as she entered the room. "Morning," she whispered to the dog, still feeling slightly foolish for talking to an animal as if it understood her. But those eyes, sharp, alert, intelligent, seemed to follow her every movement with uncanny awareness. To her surprise, Bruno looked better than he had the night before. His breathing seemed easier, and though he was clearly still weak, there was a new alertness in his posture. The bandages they had wrapped around his middle were still clean, showing no fresh blood seeping through. Mia knelt beside him, keeping her movements slow and gentle. "How are you feeling, boy?" she asked softly, extending her hand for him to sniff. Bruno's nose twitched, taking in her scent, and then, with what seemed like deliberate care, he stretched his neck forward and licked her hand once. The gesture felt almost formal, like a greeting between equals. "You're a strange one, aren't you?" Mia murmured, cautiously stroking his head. His fur was softer than it had appeared when wet and matted with mud. Ethan stirred on the couch, blinking confusedly before his eyes focused on Mia and Bruno. "Hey," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "How is he?" "Better, I think," Mia replied. "The medicine must be helping." Ethan joined her on the floor, examining the bandages with careful fingers. "The bleeding has stopped at least. That's a good sign." He yawned and stretched. "What time is it?" "Just after 7. Noah's still asleep." "Small mercies," Ethan said with a tired smile. That boy would be down here the second he woke up, demanding to know how his new best friend is doing. As if on cue, the sound of small feet padding down the stairs reached them. Noah appeared in the doorway, his hair tousled from sleep, his favorite stuffed dog clutched in one arm. His eyes immediately sought out Bruno, widening with relief when he saw the German shepherd still alive. "Bruno!" he cried, rushing forward. "You didn't leave!" Mia instinctively put out a hand to slow her son down. "Careful, sweetie. Bruno is still hurt." But her warning was unnecessary. Noah had already skidded to a stop a few feet away from the dog, approaching the rest of the way with exaggerated care. "I know, Mommy," he said with surprising patience. "Bruno told me to be gentle." There it was again, that strange insistence that the dog communicated with him. Mia and Ethan exchanged concerned glances. Noah sat cross-legged beside Bruno, who shifted slightly to rest his head on the boy's knee. The gesture was so tender, so protective, that Mia felt her throat tighten with emotion. "He's hungry," Noah announced, stroking Bruno's ears. "He wants real food, not dog food." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? And what kind of real food does Bruno want?" Noah tilted his head, as if listening to something. "Eggs," he declared finally, "and maybe some meat, but not too much because his tummy hurts." Mia might have dismissed this as a child projecting his own preferences onto the dog, except that Bruno's eyes had swiveled toward the kitchen at the mention of eggs, his ears perking up slightly. "I'll make some scrambled eggs," she found herself saying, "for all of us. And maybe Bruno can have a little if the vet says it's okay." While Mia prepared breakfast, Ethan called the veterinary clinic and arranged to bring Bruno in later that morning. Noah remained glued to Bruno's side, speaking to him in a low, confidential voice that neither parent could quite make out. "What are you two talking about?" Ethan asked, kneeling beside his son. Noah looked up, his expression oddly solemn. "Bruno is telling me about the bad things," he said simply. Ethan felt a chill despite the warm morning sun streaming through the windows. "What bad things, buddy?" Noah's brow furrowed in concentration. "The man who hurt him." Bruno saw something he wasn't supposed to see. The boy looked down at the dog, who was watching him with those intense amber eyes. "That's why the man tried to kill him, but Bruno got away. He ran and ran until he found us." Ethan glanced at Mia, who had paused in the doorway between the kitchen and living room, a spatula in her hand, her face pale. "Noah, honey," she said carefully, "are you making up a story about Bruno? It's okay if you are." "No, Mommy," Noah said with surprising force. "Bruno is showing me, in my head, like a movie." The absolute conviction in her son's voice sent another chill through Mia. She'd heard of the special bonds that sometimes formed between children and animals. Some even said that certain pets could sense illness or danger before humans could. But this was different. This was as if Noah was claiming some sort of telepathic connection with the dog. Before she could respond, the smell of burning eggs brought her attention back to breakfast. She hurried into the kitchen, grateful for the momentary distraction from Noah's disturbing claims. When she returned with plates of fresh eggs and toast, she found Ethan attempting to help Bruno stand up. The dog was struggling to his feet, his legs trembling with the effort, but his determination was evident. "He wants to go outside," Noah explained, hovering anxiously nearby. "He needs to go potty." With Ethan's support, Bruno managed to stand, swaying slightly. His wound clearly pained him, but there was a dignity in the way he held himself, refusing to whimper or show weakness. "I'll take him out back," Ethan said. "Can you grab a towel to put under him in the car later? I don't want blood or mud on the seats." Mia nodded, setting the plates down on the coffee table. "Noah, eat your breakfast while Daddy helps Bruno outside." For once, Noah didn't argue, though his eyes followed Bruno and Ethan as they made their slow way to the back door. He picked at his eggs without enthusiasm, his mind clearly elsewhere. "Noah," Mia said gently, sitting beside him, "you know that animals can't really talk to people, right? Not with words." Noah looked at her with an expression that was startlingly adult, patient, almost pitying. "I know that, Mommy. Bruno doesn't use words. He shows me pictures and feelings." He took a small bite of toast. "He's scared, not for himself, for us." Mia felt her appetite vanish. "Why would he be scared for us?" Noah shrugged, the childlike gesture at odds with his serious face. "Because the bad man might find out where he is, and then he'll come here." Before Mia could pursue this alarming statement, Ethan returned with Bruno, who was moving a little more steadily now. "He did his business," Ethan reported, "and he seems a little stronger. I think we can get him to the car without too much trouble." They finished breakfast quickly, Noah finally eating with more enthusiasm after Bruno accepted a small portion of eggs from his hand. Then they prepared to take Bruno to the vet, wrapping him in a clean blanket and helping him to the car. The dog moved with obvious pain, but also with a surprising determination, as if driven by some purpose beyond simple survival. At the veterinary clinic, Dr. Miller examined Bruno thoroughly, her expression growing increasingly puzzled as she checked his wounds, both old and new. "This is one tough dog," she said, gently probing the knife wound, which made Bruno flinch but not growl. "The wound is deep but clean, missed any vital organs. With antibiotics and rest, he should recover physically." She frowned, running her hands over Bruno's ribs and scarred flanks. "But he's been through a lot, this one. These older scars, some look like knife wounds, others like bites, and he's severely malnourished." "Can you tell if he has an owner?" Mia asked. "Is he microchipped?" Dr. Miller nodded, reaching for a scanner. "Let's check." She ran the device over Bruno's shoulders and neck, pausing when it emitted a faint beep. "Yes, there's a chip." She checked the readout and her eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Well, that's unusual. This is a very old chip, at least 10 years old, judging by the format of the ID number." She tapped at her computer. "Let me check the registry." They waited anxiously, Noah pressed against Bruno's side, while the vet searched the database. Finally, she turned back to them, her expression even more puzzled. "The chip is registered to a Daniel Reed," she said slowly. "But that's strange." "What is it?" Ethan asked, picking up on her hesitation. Dr. Miller glanced at Noah, then back at the adults. "Let's step outside for a moment," she suggested quietly. Ethan and Mia followed her into the hallway, leaving Noah with Bruno. As soon as the door closed behind them, Dr. Miller's professional composure slipped, revealing genuine concern. "Daniel Reed was a police officer," she said in a low voice. "I recognize the name from the news. He went missing about 5 months ago." Mia's hand flew to her mouth. "Missing?" Dr. Miller nodded grimly. "It was a big story locally. He disappeared while investigating a case. His car was found abandoned, but no sign of him. And now his dog shows up stabbed and half-starved." She hesitated, then added in an even lower voice, "You need to be careful. If this is really Daniel Reed's dog, and if whoever hurt him finds out where he is, you could be in danger." The warning echoed Noah's unsettling statement so closely that Mia felt a chill run down her spine. "What should we do?" "Call the police, Doctor," Miller said immediately. "Tell them you found Daniel Reed's dog. They'll want to know. They might even be able to use the dog to track down what happened to him." "And in the meantime," Ethan asked, his face tight with concern, "we have a 5-year-old son. If there's any risk, keep the dog for now," Dr. Miller advised. "He's in no condition to be moved to a shelter, and he seems attached to your family already. Just be vigilant, lock your doors, and call the police as soon as you get home." They thanked her, paid for the examination and medications, and helped Bruno back to the car. Throughout the exchange, Bruno had watched them with those intelligent eyes, as if understanding every word. On the drive home, Mia couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over her. Noah's strange claims about Bruno showing him things, the revelation about Daniel Reed, the warning from Dr. Miller, it all painted a picture far more sinister than the simple rescue of a stray dog. "We should call the police right away," she said quietly to Ethan, glancing back at Noah, who was whispering to Bruno in the back seat. Ethan nodded, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "And then what? What if this puts Noah in danger?" "We don't know that it will," Mia countered, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Maybe Bruno just ran away after Daniel Reed disappeared. Maybe there's no connection." But she didn't believe it, and from Ethan's expression, neither did he. When they arrived home, Ethan helped Bruno inside, while Mia called the local police department. She was connected to a detective named Ramirez, who became immediately alert at the mention of Daniel Reed's dog. "You found Bruno?" he asked, his voice sharp with interest. "Where? When?" Mia explained how the dog had appeared in their backyard during the storm, wounded and near death. "The vet scanned his microchip this morning," she finished. "That's how we learned he belonged to Officer Reed." "Don't go anywhere," Detective Ramirez instructed. "I'm coming over, and Mrs. Parker, don't tell anyone else about this. Not yet." The urgency in his voice only heightened Mia's sense of unease. She hung up and returned to the living room, where Noah was once again sitting with Bruno on his blanket, the two of them seemingly engaged in silent communion. "The police are coming," she told Ethan in a low voice. "A detective. He seemed very interested in Bruno." Ethan nodded, his expression grim. "I've been thinking, if Noah's right, if Bruno witnessed something he wasn't supposed to see, then whoever hurt him might come looking," Mia finished, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. "Ethan, what have we gotten ourselves into?" Before he could answer, Noah spoke up from his position beside Bruno. "Bruno says the bad man isn't done," he announced, his childish voice somehow making the statement even more chilling. Mia and Ethan froze, staring at their son. "What do you mean, sweetie?" Mia asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Noah stroked Bruno's head, his eyes downcast. "The bad man hurt Bruno's person, and now Bruno is afraid the bad man will hurt us too." He looked up, his eyes wide with a fear no 5-year-old should know. "Bruno says we need to be careful." A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by the distant sound of a car approaching. Mia moved to the window, peering cautiously through the curtains. A plain sedan was pulling into their driveway, unmarked but with the unmistakable profile of a police vehicle. "The detective is here," she said, feeling both relieved and apprehensive. Detective Ramirez was a compact, serious man, with watchful eyes that took in everything: the family, the house, and especially Bruno, who had managed to stand up when the detective entered, as if presenting himself for inspection. "Well, I'll be damned," Ramirez said softly, kneeling before the German shepherd. It really is you, Bruno. He reached out a hand, which Bruno sniffed cautiously before allowing the detective to stroke his head. We thought you were gone, too. You knew Officer Reed? Ethan asked. Ramirez nodded, his eyes still on Bruno. We worked together for years. Bruno was his K9 partner, one of the best tracking dogs the department ever had. When Dan disappeared and Bruno wasn't found with him, or at his home, we assumed the worst for both of them. Bruno is a police dog? Mia asked, suddenly understanding the animal's unusual behavior, his alertness, his assessment of their home, the way he had positioned himself protectively near Noah. Was, Ramirez corrected. He retired about 2 years ago when Dan moved to detective work, but those instincts never really go away. He looked closer at Bruno's injuries, his expression hardening. Someone stabbed him? Mia nodded. The vet thinks it happened not long before we found him, maybe the same day. Ramirez's face was grim. Bruno was with Dan when he disappeared. He was investigating a human trafficking operation, a big one, with connections to some very dangerous people. We think Dan got too close, found something he wasn't supposed to find. And Bruno was with him, Ethan said slowly. He saw what happened. If only dogs could talk, Ramirez said with a sigh, standing up. But he can, Noah piped up from his place beside Bruno. He shows me things. The detective glanced at Noah, then at Mia and Ethan, his expression questioning. Mia gave a small, helpless shrug. He's been saying that since we found Bruno, she explained. That Bruno shows him things in his head, pictures, feelings. She hesitated, then added, he said Bruno was stabbed because he saw something he wasn't supposed to see. That was before we knew about Officer Reed, or that Bruno was a police dog. Ramirez looked thoughtful rather than dismissive. Kids have intuition sometimes, he said, and Bruno was always smart, even for a trained K9. He knelt beside Noah. What else has Bruno shown you, buddy? Noah looked at Bruno, who was watching him intently, then back at the detective. A warehouse, he said slowly. By water, and men with guns, and... He stopped, his face crumpling suddenly. Bruno's person. The bad men hurt him really bad. The room fell silent. Ramirez's face had gone still, his eyes sharp with interest. A warehouse by water, he repeated. Anything else? Any signs or numbers on the warehouse? Noah shook his head. It was dark. Bruno was scared. He tried to help his person, but one of the bad men hurt him, so he ran away to get help. The boy's eyes filled with tears. But he couldn't save his person. Ramirez stood up abruptly, his expression unreadable. I need to make a call, he said, stepping outside. Mia and Ethan exchanged worried glances. Noah, Mia said gently, are you making up a story about Bruno? It's okay if you are. No, Mommy, Noah insisted, wiping at his eyes. Bruno is showing me, like movies in my head. He looked down at the dog, who nudged his hand gently with his nose. He's sad because he couldn't help his person, but he's trying to be brave for us. Mia didn't know what to think. On one hand, it seemed impossible. A dog somehow telepathically communicating with a child. On the other hand, Noah knew things he couldn't possibly know otherwise. About Daniel Reed, about the warehouse by the water, about Bruno being a police dog. Ramirez returned, his manner now brisk and professional. I've called this in, he said. We've been searching for any lead on Dan's disappearance for months. This is the first real break we've had. He looked at Bruno with newfound respect. Somehow, he made it back, and he brought information with him. Through our son, Ethan said skeptically. Ramirez shrugged. I've been a cop for 20 years. I've learned not to dismiss anything outright, no matter how strange it seems. He looked down at Noah. If Bruno shows you anything else, you tell your parents right away, okay? Noah nodded solemnly. In the meantime, Ramirez continued, addressing Mia and Ethan, I'm going to have a patrol car drive by your house regularly, just as a precaution. His expression softened slightly. Bruno chose your family for a reason. He's a good judge of character, always was. But until we know exactly what he witnessed and who might be looking for him, it's better to be safe. After Ramirez left, promising to return the next day, a heavy silence fell over the Parker home. Bruno had settled back on his blanket, exhausted by the events of the day, but his eyes remained alert, scanning the room periodically as if checking for threats. "What do we do now?" Mia asked quietly, watching as Noah arranged his toy animals protectively around Bruno. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "What can we do? We can't just turn Bruno out, even if—" He lowered his voice. "Even if it puts us at risk. He saved himself by coming here. We can't betray that trust." Mia nodded, knowing her husband was right. Whatever Bruno had witnessed, whatever danger might find its way to their door because of him, they were involved now. They couldn't turn back. The rest of the day passed in a strange tension. They tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for Noah's sake. Lunch, a movie on TV, a board game in the afternoon. But Mia found herself jumping at every sound, peering out of windows at the slightest noise. Ethan checked the locks on the doors and windows twice, then a third time before dinner. Bruno remained in the living room, resting but vigilant. When Noah wasn't by his side, the dog's eyes followed the boy's movements through the house, as if keeping him under constant protection. It was both comforting and unsettling to witness. As night fell, the tension in the house seemed to grow. The shadows lengthened, stretching across the floors and walls like grasping fingers. Mia turned on extra lights, unable to shake the feeling that they were being watched. "Maybe we should stay in a hotel tonight," she suggested to Ethan as they prepared dinner, "just until the police have more information." Ethan considered this, then shook his head. Moving Bruno in his condition wouldn't be good, and honestly, I'd rather be in our own home, where we know all the entrances and exits, than in a strange place. He was right, of course, but it didn't ease the knot of anxiety in Mia's stomach. She checked on Noah, who was sitting with Bruno in the living room, speaking to him in that low, confidential voice he'd been using all day. "Dinner's almost ready, sweetie," she said. "Why don't you go wash your hands?" Noah looked up, his expression oddly distant, as if his mind was elsewhere. "Okay, Mommy." He leaned close to Bruno and whispered something in the dog's ear before heading upstairs to the bathroom. Mia watched him go, then turned to Bruno. "I don't know if you can understand me," she said softly, feeling slightly foolish. "But if you can, if what Noah says is true, please help us keep him safe." Bruno's amber eyes fixed on her, solemn and steady. He made a soft noise in his throat, not quite a whine, not quite a bark, and nodded. Or at least, that's what it looked like to Mia, a deliberate, understanding nod. She blinked, shaking her head slightly. Now she was imagining things too. The stress of the situation was getting to her, making her see meaning in ordinary dog behaviors. And yet, there was nothing ordinary about Bruno. Dinner was a subdued affair. Even Noah was quieter than usual, picking at his food distractedly. When asked what was wrong, he simply shrugged and said, "Bruno is worried. He keeps seeing shadows." Another chill ran down Mia's spine. She exchanged a glance with Ethan, who looked equally disturbed by their son's comment. They got Noah ready for bed early, both parents accompanying him through his bedtime routine. He insisted on saying goodnight to Bruno before going upstairs, kneeling beside the dog and whispering something that made Bruno's ears perk up alertly. "What did you tell him?" Ethan asked as they tucked Noah into bed. "That he should bark really loud if the bad men come," Noah said matter-of-factly. "So we can all hide." Mia smoothed her son's hair, trying to hide her concern. "Bruno is downstairs resting, and Daddy and I are going to be awake for a while. No one is going to come, sweetie. The police are watching our house, remember." Noah nodded, but his expression remained serious. "Bruno says we should still be careful." After Noah finally fell asleep, Mia and Ethan retreated downstairs, speaking in low voices to avoid waking their son. "I don't know what to make of all this," Ethan admitted, checking the locks on the doors yet again. "Bruno, Noah's visions, Detective Ramirez's warnings." "I know," Mia agreed, curling up on the couch where she could see both the front door and the stairs leading up to Noah's room. "Part of me thinks we're overreacting, but then I remember that someone stabbed Bruno, someone who might still be looking for him, and if they find him here—" She couldn't finish the thought. Bruno lay on his blanket nearby, his head raised, ears constantly shifting, as if monitoring sounds beyond human hearing. His presence was both reassuring and a constant reminder of the potential danger they faced. They decided to take shifts staying awake, just for the night. Ethan would take the first watch, while Mia tried to get some sleep on the couch. Tomorrow, they would figure out a more permanent solution, perhaps staying with relatives until the police had more information. Mia drifted into an uneasy sleep, her dreams filled with shadowy figures and amber eyes watching from the darkness. She wasn't sure how long she'd been asleep when a sound jolted her awake, a low, rumbling growl that raised the hair on the back of her neck. Bruno was on his feet, staring intently at the front window, his body rigid with alertness. The growl continued, deep and threatening, nothing like the gentle creature who had licked Noah's hand and accepted their care. "Ethan," Mia whispered, reaching out to shake her husband, who had dozed off in the armchair despite his intention to stay awake. "Ethan, wake up." Ethan blinked awake, immediately alert as he registered Bruno's posture and the continuing growl. "What is it? What's wrong?" Before Mia could answer, they heard another sound that made their blood run cold. Noah screaming from upstairs. "Mommy, Daddy, he's scared. The bad man is coming." They bolted up the stairs, Bruno somehow finding the strength to follow despite his injury, moving with surprising speed for an animal that had been close to death just a day earlier. They burst into Noah's room to find him sitting up in bed, his eyes wide with terror. "He's coming," Noah whimpered, clutching his stuffed dog to his chest. Bruno saw him. As if to confirm this, Bruno pushed past them into the room, positioning himself in front of Noah's bed, his teeth bared in a silent snarl as he faced the window. And then they saw it, a shadow moving outside, visible through the gap in Noah's curtains. A human figure slipping along the side of the house. Someone was out there, watching their home in the dead of night. Ethan reacted instantly. "Stay with Noah," he ordered Mia, already heading back downstairs. "Call 911. "Ethan, no!" Mia cried, but he was already gone. She heard the front door open and close as she fumbled for her phone, dialing with shaking fingers while keeping her body between Noah and the window. Bruno remained at his post, growling continuously now, his eyes fixed on the window as if daring the shadow to try to enter. The next few minutes were a blur of fear and adrenaline. Mia reported the intruder to the 911 operator, then huddled with Noah on his bed, Bruno standing guard before them. They heard Ethan outside, shouting something they couldn't make out. Then silence, which was somehow more terrifying than any sound. When Ethan finally reappeared in the doorway of Noah's room, Mia nearly collapsed with relief. "He's gone," Ethan reported, his voice tight with tension. "I didn't get a good look at him. He ran when he saw me, but I found these." He held up his phone, displaying a photo of what appeared to be footprints in the soft earth beneath Noah's window. "The police are on their way," Mia said, still holding Noah close. "God, Ethan, what if you'd caught up to him? What if he was armed?" "I wasn't thinking," Ethan admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I just reacted." Bruno had relaxed slightly with Ethan's return, but he remained on alert, his eyes moving between the window and the bedroom door, as if calculating potential threats from all directions. "Bruno knew," Noah said softly, stroking the dog's back with a trembling hand. "He saw the bad man in his head, and then the bad man came." Mia and Ethan exchanged looks over their son's head. Too much had happened now to dismiss Noah's claims entirely. Whether through some uncanny animal instinct or something more inexplicable, Bruno had sensed the danger before any of them. The police arrived minutes later, including Detective Ramirez, who had responded to the call personally. They searched the property thoroughly, but found no one. The only evidence of the intruder was the footprints Ethan had photographed and a muddy handprint on the side of the house, just below Noah's window. "He was trying to look in," Ramirez concluded grimly. "Check in the house, maybe looking for Bruno. Or for us," Mia said, unable to suppress a shudder. "Noah said Bruno showed him that the bad man was coming, before we heard anything." Ramirez looked at the boy, who was sitting on his bed, Bruno's head resting protectively on his lap. "Is that true, Noah? Bruno showed you something before we found the footprints?" Noah nodded solemnly. "He showed me a shadow, a man watching our house. He was angry because he found Bruno." Ramirez's expression was thoughtful. "Bruno was a tracking dog," he said slowly, "trained to follow scents, to hunt, but also to detect threats. He looked at Bruno with newfound respect. Maybe he sensed something we couldn't, picked up a scent or a sound. It was a rational explanation, but it didn't quite account for Noah's foreknowledge. How had the boy known someone was outside before Bruno had even growled? "I'm going to have an officer stationed outside your house for the rest of the night," Ramirez decided, And tomorrow, we need to talk about getting your family to a safer location until we figure this out. After the police had gone, leaving a patrol car parked visibly at the curb, the Parkers huddled together in the master bedroom. None of them wanted to be alone, not even in separate rooms. Bruno lay at the foot of the bed, still alert despite his obvious exhaustion. "We should leave first thing in the morning," Ethan said quietly, his arm around Mia's shoulders. "Go to your sister's place maybe, until this is all resolved." Mia nodded, watching as Noah finally drifted into an uneasy sleep between them. "Do you think—" she began, then stopped, unsure how to articulate what she was thinking. "What?" Ethan prompted. "Do you think it's possible? What Noah says about Bruno showing him things? After tonight? I don't know what to believe anymore." Ethan was silent for a long moment, his eyes on their sleeping son and the vigilant dog keeping watch over him. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "But I do know that Bruno warned us somehow, and Noah understood that warning before we did." He sighed, the weight of the night's events heavy in the sound. "Let's just be grateful, whatever it means." Mia nodded, fatigue finally catching up with her as the adrenaline of fear faded. As she drifted toward sleep, her last conscious thought was of Bruno's amber eyes, watching over them all with that strange, unsettling intelligence. What else did those eyes see? And what would tomorrow bring? Have you ever felt a connection with an animal that seemed almost supernatural? Share your story in the comments below. Morning arrived with pale, tentative sunlight filtering through the curtains. The Parker family had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep just before dawn, huddled together on the master bed, with Bruno maintaining his vigilant position at their feet. It was Noah who woke first, his small hand reaching out to touch Bruno's fur, as if to reassure himself that the dog was still there. "Good morning," he whispered to Bruno, who immediately lifted his head, amber eyes alert and watchful despite the night's events. Mia stirred at the sound of her son's voice, blinking away the heaviness of too little sleep. For a moment, she allowed herself to hope that the previous night had been nothing but a bad dream, the intruder, the fear, the police. But the sight of Bruno on their bed and the patrol car still visible through a gap in the curtains confirmed the harsh reality. "Morning, sweetie," she murmured to Noah, trying to infuse her voice with a normalcy she didn't feel. "Did you sleep okay?" Noah shook his head, his expression serious in a way that no 5-year-olds should be. "Bruno kept watching," he said. "He didn't sleep much." Mia looked at the German shepherd, noting the alertness in his posture, despite what must have been overwhelming fatigue. His wound would need checking and fresh bandages, but somehow he had found the strength to stand guard over them all night. Ethan woke shortly after, immediately reaching for his phone to check for messages from Detective Ramirez. "He says he'll be here by 9, he reported, "and he's arranging a safe house for us." "A safe house?" Mia repeated, the term making their situation seem suddenly more dangerous, more real. "Like in the movies?" "Just a secure location," Ethan clarified, though his expression belied his calm tone. "Somewhere we can stay until they figure out who's after Bruno and why." They went through the motions of a normal morning routine, trying to maintain some semblance of regularity for Noah's sake. Breakfast, getting dressed, brushing teeth. Ordinary actions that felt strangely disconnected from the extraordinary situation they found themselves in. But Noah was different, quiet, introspective, his usual morning chatter notably absent. He ate only when prompted, pushing his cereal around the bowl more than consuming it. His attention remained fixed on Bruno, who had stationed himself near the kitchen doorway, his eyes constantly moving between the family and the windows. "Noah, honey, are you feeling okay?" Mia asked, placing a hand on her son's forehead to check for fever, though she suspected his mood had nothing to do with physical illness. Noah looked up at her with those solemn eyes that seemed to have aged overnight. "I'm not hungry," he said simply. "Bruno is worried." "About what, sweetie?" Noah hesitated, glancing at Bruno as if seeking permission to speak. The bad man heard him because he saw something he wasn't supposed to. The statement hung in the air, eerily similar to what Detective Ramirez had suggested about Officer Reed's disappearance, that he had discovered something about the trafficking operation that had gotten him killed. "What did Bruno see, Noah?" Ethan asked carefully, setting down his coffee cup and moving closer to his son. Noah's brow furrowed in concentration, as if he was trying to interpret complex images. "People in cages," he said finally. In the warehouse by the water. Bruno's person found them, and the bad men came. They hurt Bruno's person really bad. Bruno tried to help, but they hurt him too. His eyes filled with tears. He had to run away to get help, but he feels bad that he left his person. Mia and Ethan exchanged shocked glances. People in cages, human trafficking. It aligned precisely with what Ramirez had told them about Daniel Reed's investigation. Noah, Mia said carefully, trying to keep her voice steady. How do you know these things? Did someone tell you about Officer Reed and what happened to him? Noah shook his head emphatically. Bruno shows me, he insisted. In my head, like movies, but fuzzy sometimes. And with feelings too. Ethan knelt beside his son, placing his hands gently on the boy's shoulders. Noah, it's okay if you heard Mommy and me talking about this, or if Detective Ramirez said something. You're not in trouble. I didn't, Noah protested, his voice rising with frustration. Bruno is showing me. Why don't you believe me? As if in response to the boy's distress, Bruno moved from his post by the door, coming to sit beside Noah's chair. He nudged the boy's hand with his nose, a gesture of comfort and support. Noah immediately calmed, placing his small hand on Bruno's head. It's okay, he whispered to the dog. I believe you, even if they don't. Mia felt a lump in her throat at the obvious bond between her son and this mysterious dog who had crashed into their lives just 2 days ago. Whether Noah's visions were real or imagined, the connection between them was undeniable. We believe that you believe it, sweetie, she said carefully. It's just hard for grown-ups to understand sometimes. Noah looked at her with unexpected compassion. I know, Mommy. Bruno says adults forget how to see with their hearts. The statement, so philosophical from the mouth of a 5-year-old, left both parents momentarily speechless. But before they could respond, the doorbell rang, making them all jump. Bruno immediately moved to a position between the family and the front door, his posture alert, but not aggressive. It's probably Detective Ramirez, Ethan said, though he checked through the peephole before opening the door. The detective entered, nodding acknowledgement to Bruno before addressing the family. His face was drawn with fatigue, suggesting he'd had no more sleep than they had. Any trouble after I left last night? He asked without preamble. Ethan shook his head. Quiet, with your officer outside. Any luck finding the intruder? No, Ramirez admitted. But we're processing the footprints and the handprint. Might get something. He glanced at Noah, who was standing close to Bruno, one hand resting on the dog's back. How's he doing? Mia hesitated, unsure how to explain Noah's continued insistence about Bruno's messages, without sounding like they were humoring a child's imagination. He's processing everything in his own way. Ramirez seemed to understand the subtext. Noah, he said, crouching down to the boy's level, has Bruno shown you anything else? Anything about the warehouse or the bad men? Noah looked surprised, then relieved that an adult was taking him seriously. Yes, he said eagerly. There were numbers on the warehouse, big white numbers on a red door, 147. Ramirez's expression sharpened with interest. 147? Are you sure? Noah nodded firmly. And it smelled like fish. Bruno remembers the smell really strong. The detective straightened, pulling out his phone immediately. I need to call this in, he said, stepping outside for privacy. What just happened? Mia asked Ethan in a whisper. How would Noah know about numbers on a warehouse? Ethan shook his head, looking as bewildered as she felt. I don't know, but Ramirez seemed to think it was important. When the detective returned, his manner had changed from concerned to urgent. We need to get you all to the safe house now, he said, already moving toward the windows to check outside. One of our search teams found a warehouse matching that description near the harbor. It's been abandoned for years, officially, but there are signs of recent activity. And you think that's where Officer Reed, Ethan began, glancing at Noah. We're going to find out, Ramirez cut him off, clearly not wanting to discuss details in front of the child. But right now, my priority is getting your family somewhere secure. Pack only what you absolutely need for a few days. We leave in 15 minutes. The next quarter hour passed in a blur of hasty packing and tense silence. Noah refused to be separated from Bruno, insisting on helping the injured dog navigate through the house as they prepared to leave. Despite his wound, Bruno seemed stronger today, moving with more confidence, though still favoring his injured side. Ramirez instructed them to leave through the back door, where an unmarked police SUV waited in the alley. "Keep your heads down," he advised as they approached the vehicle, just in case someone's watching. They piled into the SUV, Mia and Noah in the back with Bruno, Ethan in the passenger seat, Ramirez driving. As they pulled away from the only home Noah had ever known, Mia felt a surge of unreality. 3 days ago, they had been a normal family with normal concerns. Now they were being taken to a safe house, fleeing from unnamed dangers, all because of a wounded dog who had collapsed in their backyard during a storm. "Where are we going?" she asked, as Ramirez drove through unfamiliar neighborhoods, taking seemingly random turns as if to shake off any potential tail. "Department keeps a few properties for situations like this," he explained, eyes constantly checking the rear-view mirror. "Nothing fancy, but secure. We use them for witnesses sometimes, or officers who've been threatened." The drive took nearly an hour, though by Mia's estimation, they hadn't traveled more than 20 miles from their home. Ramirez's circuitous route eventually led them to a modest bungalow in a quiet suburb, its unremarkable appearance offering no hint of its function as a police safe house. "Home sweet home for now," Ramirez said as they pulled into the garage, the door closing automatically behind them. "Let's get you settled in." The interior of the house was simple but comfortable. Basic furniture, neutral colors, minimal decorations. It had the impersonal feel of a hotel suite, designed to be functional rather than homey. But it was clean and secure, with heavy locks on all doors and windows, and a security system that Ramirez explained was linked directly to the police department. "There will be an officer stationed outside at all times," he assured them, "and I'll be checking in regularly. The refrigerator is stocked, and there's a tablet with some games and movies for Noah. Cell service might be spotty, it's a security measure, but there's a landline for emergencies." He handed Ethan a piece of paper. "These are the only numbers you should call. My direct line is at the top." After helping them bring in their bags and ensuring Bruno had a comfortable spot in the living room, Ramirez prepared to leave. But before he did, he knelt once more beside Noah. "You've been very brave," he told the boy, "and very helpful. If Bruno shows you anything else, anything at all, I want you to tell your parents right away, okay? It might help us find the bad men." Noah nodded solemnly. "Bruno will try," he promised, "but sometimes the pictures are scary." Ramirez glanced at Mia and Ethan. "Just write everything down," he advised, "no matter how strange or small the detail seems. At this point," he hesitated, looking slightly embarrassed. "At this point, I'm willing to try anything to find Dan Reed and break this trafficking ring." After Ramirez left, the Parker family stood in the unfamiliar living room, suddenly at a loss. The urgent activity of the morning had given way to an uncertain waiting, the adrenaline fading to leave them tired and disoriented. "Well," Ethan said finally, trying to sound upbeat, "who wants to explore our new temporary home?" They made a game of it for Noah's sake, pretending they were on an adventure rather than in hiding from dangerous criminals. The house had 2 bedrooms, a small bathroom, a kitchen dining area, and the living room where they now stood. Simple, functional, and utterly unlike the warm, personal space of their own home. Bruno followed them on their exploration, still moving carefully, but with increasing steadiness. His wound would need checking soon, but for now, he seemed content to stay close to Noah, maintaining his protective vigil. By afternoon, they had settled into an uneasy routine. Ethan worked remotely on his laptop, having informed his office that there was a family emergency. Mia helped Noah set up his few toys and books in the smaller bedroom, trying to create some sense of normalcy. Bruno alternated between resting on a blanket they had spread near the sofa and patrolling the perimeter of the house, checking windows and doors with the thoroughness of his police training. It was during dinner, a simple meal of pasta that Mia prepared from the supplies in the kitchen, that Noah went suddenly still, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth, his eyes fixed on Bruno, who had raised his head alertly from his position near the table. "Noah?" Mia prompted, recognizing the now familiar sign that her son was receiving something from Bruno. "What is it, sweetie?" Noah set down his fork carefully, his small face intense with concentration. "Bruno is remembering something," he said slowly. "From before, when his person took him to the warehouse." Ethan immediately reached for a notepad they had positioned on the table for exactly this purpose. "What does he remember?" he asked, pen poised to record every detail. "A man," Noah said, his brow furrowed. with a scar. Here." He traced a finger down his right cheek. Bruno's person called him Chief. Ethan wrote this down, exchanging a significant look with Mia. A nickname or a title? "Anything else?" he prompted gently. Noah closed his eyes, as if trying to see the images more clearly. There were papers. Bruno's person took pictures of them with his phone. And then he trailed off, his face clouding with distress. Then the bad men came, with guns. Mia moved to comfort her son, but Noah wasn't finished. Bruno's person hid his phone, he continued, the words coming faster now. Before the bad men caught him, he told Bruno to mark it, and then to run for help. But the bad men found them first. Tears filled Noah's eyes. They hurt Bruno's person, and then they hurt Bruno when he tried to help. The implications were clear. Daniel Reed had hidden evidence, his phone with the photographs somewhere in or near the warehouse, and he had instructed his K9 partner to mark the location, a standard command for police dogs to identify a specific spot. "We need to call Ramirez," Ethan said, already reaching for the landline. This could be the break they need. The detective arrived within the hour, bringing with him a senior K9 officer named Martinez, who specialized in working with police dogs. Martinez greeted Bruno with professional respect, addressing him like a fellow officer rather than a pet. "Hello, old-timer," he said, kneeling to examine Bruno's wound before looking into his eyes with the direct gaze of someone used to communicating with animals. "You've been through the wars, haven't you?" Bruno met his gaze steadily, his posture subtly shifting from protective family guardian to professional K9. There was a dignity in the way he held himself now, a sense of purpose that transcended his injuries. "I understand you've been sending messages through the boy," Martinez continued, his tone matter-of-fact, showing none of the skepticism Mia might have expected. "Let's see if we can try a more direct approach." From his pocket, Martinez produced a small evidence bag containing what appeared to be a scrap of fabric. "This belonged to Daniel Reed," he explained to the Parkers. "It's from his uniform shirt. Standard procedure for K9 handlers to leave items with their scent in case the dogs need to track them." He opened the bag and held it near Bruno's nose. The effect was immediate and profound. Bruno's entire body tensed, his ears pricking forward, a small whine escaping his throat. He sniffed deeply, then looked directly at Noah, as if the boy was his conduit for communication. Noah's eyes widened. "He's showing me more clearly now," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "The warehouse, and a special place, under some broken boards. That's where his person hid the phone. Bruno marked it with his scent, but then the bad men came." Martinez nodded, unsurprised. "Scent is memory for dogs," he explained, "especially trained ones like Bruno. Dan's scent is triggering clearer recall." He turned to Ramirez. "We need to get back to that warehouse. If the phone is still there, it could have everything we need to break the case." Ramirez nodded grimly. "We have teams searching it now, but it's a big space and parts of the structure are unstable. If we knew exactly where to look—" "Bruno could show you," Noah interrupted, looking at Martinez with earnest eyes. "He remembers exactly where, under the broken boards, near the red door with the numbers." The two officers exchanged glances. "It's not standard procedure to bring civilians, especially children, to an active investigation site," Ramirez said carefully. "But Bruno is still recovering," Martinez pointed out. "He might not be strong enough to go himself. And if the boy really is somehow connected to him—" He shrugged, leaving the implication hanging. Mia immediately shook her head. "Absolutely not. Noah is not going anywhere near that warehouse. It's too dangerous." "I agree," Ethan said firmly, placing a protective hand on Noah's shoulder. "There has to be another way." Noah looked up at his parents, then at Bruno, who had moved to stand beside him. "Bruno says we have to help his person," he said quietly. "Even if his person is gone, we have to help the people in the cages." The simple statement, filled with a child's understanding of justice and compassion, hung in the air between them. Mia felt tears spring to her eyes at her son's bravery and empathy, qualities that shone through despite his fear. "Let's try something," Martinez suggested after a moment of heavy silence. "I have some photographs of the warehouse interior taken during the initial search. Maybe Bruno can identify the location from those." He retrieved a tablet from his car and returned with a series of images showing different sections of the abandoned warehouse. Noah sat on the floor beside Bruno, holding the tablet where the dog could see it, flipping through photos under Martinez's guidance. Watch his reactions, Martinez instructed, even subtle ones, ear movements, tension in his body, changes in breathing. They all mean something. They went through dozens of images, Noah carefully watching Bruno for any response. Occasionally, the dog would show interest in a particular photo, but not the intense reaction they were hoping for. And then, on the 27th image, Bruno suddenly stiffened, a low whine building in his throat. The photo showed a section of damaged flooring near a wall painted a faded red. "That's it!" Noah exclaimed. "That's where his person hid the phone, under those broken boards in the corner." Martinez immediately called Ramirez, who had stepped outside to coordinate with the search teams. They could hear his urgent voice relaying the information, directing officers to the specific location in the warehouse. Now, all they could do was wait. The next hour passed with excruciating slowness. Noah remained by Bruno's side, sometimes whispering to him, sometimes simply sitting in companionable silence. Mia and Ethan tried to distract themselves with mundane tasks, washing the dinner dishes, unpacking a few more of their hastily gathered belongings, but their attention constantly returned to the phone, willing it to ring with news. When it finally did, they all jumped. Ramirez's voice on the other end was tense with controlled excitement. "We found it," he told Ethan. "The phone was exactly where Bruno said it would be. It's damaged, but the tech team thinks they can recover the data." He paused. "There's something else. The search teams found evidence of recent habitation in a lower level we didn't know existed. Signs that people were held there, just like Noah described." "The people in cages," Ethan repeated quietly, looking at his son. "They were moved recently," Ramirez continued. "Within the last week, probably. But we found items, personal effects, evidence that will help us track where they might have been taken." Another pause. "Your son and that dog, they may have just broken open the biggest human trafficking case this city has ever seen." After Ethan hung up, he relayed the information to Mia and Noah. Noah nodded solemnly, as if this was exactly what he had expected. "Bruno says there's something else," he said, his expression troubled. "Something he didn't show me before, because it was too scary." He looked at the dog, who was watching him intently. "But I'm ready now." "What secret have you kept to protect someone you love? Tell us in the comments below." Mia felt her heart race as she looked at her son's solemn face. There was something in his expression, a mixture of childish fear and startling maturity, that made her want to gather him in her arms and shield him from whatever scary thing Bruno was about to reveal. "Noah, sweetie," she began, kneeling beside him. "If it's too scary, you don't have to." "I do, Mommy," Noah interrupted, his small voice firm despite the tremor in it. "Bruno says it's important, about the bad man, the one who hurt him and his person." Ethan sat down heavily on the sofa, the enormity of the situation clearly weighing on him. Their 5-year-old son had somehow become central to a police investigation into human trafficking and possibly murder. How had their ordinary life veered so dramatically off course in just 3 days? "We're right here with you," he said to Noah, his voice gentle but strained. "Whatever Bruno needs to show you, we'll help you understand it." Noah nodded gratefully, then closed his eyes, his face scrunching in concentration as he listened to whatever Bruno was communicating. The German shepherd sat perfectly still before him, amber eyes fixed intently on the boy's face, as if physically transferring images directly into Noah's mind. After nearly a minute of tense silence, Noah's eyes flew open, wide with distress. "The bad man," he gasped. "Bruno knows who he is. He's a policeman too." The statement fell like a bomb in the quiet room. A policeman. If true, it meant Officer Reed had uncovered corruption within his own department and paid the ultimate price for it. "Are you sure, Noah?" Ethan asked, exchanging a shocked glance with Mia. "Bruno is saying the bad man who hurt him was a police officer?" Noah nodded emphatically. "Bruno saw him. He wears a uniform sometimes, but not always. He has a scar on his face." The boy traced a finger down his right cheek again, mimicking the mark he'd described earlier. "And people call him Chief." Chief. The nickname Noah had mentioned before suddenly took on new significance. Not a nickname perhaps, but a rank. Did Bruno see his face clearly? Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid of being overheard even in the supposedly secure house. Noah hesitated, looking at Bruno as if seeking confirmation. Yes, he said finally. Bruno would know him anywhere. He's seen him with his person before, at the police place. Ethan was already reaching for the landline phone, his face grim. We need to call Ramirez. Now, if there's a corrupt officer involved, especially someone high-ranking, the entire investigation could be compromised. But before he could dial, Noah spoke again, his voice rising with sudden urgency. Bruno says we can't tell. Not on the phone. The bad man might hear. Mia's blood ran cold at her son's words. They sounded like the plot of a conspiracy thriller, not something a kindergartner should be saying. And yet, if Bruno really had witnessed corruption at the highest levels of the police department, caution was absolutely warranted. What does Bruno want us to do then? She asked, forcing her voice to remain calm for Noah's sake. Noah looked at Bruno, who had risen to his feet and was standing alertly, ears forward, posture tense but controlled. He says we need to wait for the detective to come back. Tell him in person. But be careful who else is around. Ethan set the phone down slowly, his expression troubled. This is a lot to process, he said carefully. If what Bruno is showing Noah is true, we're dealing with something much bigger and more dangerous than we thought. Mia nodded, automatically moving closer to Noah, as if her physical presence could somehow protect him from the unseen threats surrounding them. Should we even stay here? She whispered to Ethan. If there's corruption in the department, how do we know this place is really safe? It was a chilling thought. The safe house could be anything but if the wrong people knew their location. Bruno would know, Noah said with simple confidence, apparently having overheard his mother's whispered question. He can smell when people are bad. That's why he was a police dog. Mia couldn't help but smile at her son's faith in Bruno's abilities, even as her own fears mounted. Well, that's good to know, she said, stroking Noah's hair. What does Bruno think we should do right now? Noah tilted his head, listening to his canine companion in that strange, silent way that Mia was beginning to accept as real, despite all logic. He says we should act normal, the boy reported, but be ready to leave if we have to. Act normal, Ethan repeated with a strained laugh. In a police safe house, hiding from criminals who may or may not include corrupt cops, with a telepathic dog sending messages through our son. Sure, totally normal. Despite the tension, Mia found herself laughing too, a release of nervous energy more than genuine amusement. Noah looked between his parents with confusion, clearly not understanding the gallows humor. Let's try to rest, Mia suggested, regaining her composure. It's been a long day, and we'll think more clearly after some sleep. They established a makeshift bedroom for Noah in the smaller of the house's 2 bedrooms, setting up his sleeping bag on the twin bed and arranging his few toys on the nightstand. Bruno insisted on staying with him, positioning himself on the floor beside the bed like a furry guardian. Are you okay with sleeping in here? Mia asked Noah as she tucked him in, acutely aware that this strange house with its sparse furnishings was nothing like his cheerful bedroom at home. Noah nodded bravely. Bruno will keep me safe, he said with absolute certainty, and he'll wake us up if anyone bad comes. Mia kissed his forehead, then hesitated, looking down at Bruno. On impulse, she reached out and gently stroked the dog's head. Thank you, she whispered, feeling only slightly foolish for addressing him directly. For protecting my son? Bruno's amber eyes met hers, solemn and knowing. He made a soft sound in his throat, not quite a whine, not quite a bark, and nodded. Or at least, that's what it looked like to Mia. A deliberate, understanding nod. She left the door ajar and joined Ethan in the living room, collapsing beside him on the sofa with a heavy sigh. I don't even know what to think anymore, she admitted, leaning her head against his shoulder. 3 days ago, I would have said it was impossible for a dog to communicate telepathically with a child. Now, ... She shrugged helplessly. I know, Ethan agreed, wrapping an arm around her. But you have to admit, Noah has known things he couldn't possibly know. About Daniel Reed, about the warehouse, about where the phone was hidden. He trailed off, shaking his head in wonder. Either our son has developed an impressive talent for making up detailed stories that just happen to be accurate, or Bruno really is showing him things, Mia finished. But why Noah? Why not us? Ethan considered this. Maybe it's because he's a child, more open-minded, more willing to believe in the impossible. Or maybe it's just Noah, something special about him that Bruno recognized. They sat in contemplative silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts about the strange situation they found themselves in. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of settling timbers and the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. "What if it's true?" Mia said finally, her voice barely audible. "About a corrupt police chief? How do we know who to trust?" "We trust Bruno," Ethan said simply. "And Noah. They've been right about everything so far." It was strange how quickly they had come to rely on the judgment of a wounded dog and their 5-year-old son. Yet, in the upside-down world they now inhabited, it made a peculiar kind of sense. They were discussing whether to try to sleep or wait up for Ramirez's return when a noise from outside made them both freeze. It was subtle, just the soft crunch of gravel under tires, but in the tense silence of the safe house, it might as well have been an explosion. Ethan moved immediately to the window, cautiously peering through a gap in the curtains. "Car pulling up," he reported in a whisper. "Not a police cruiser, dark sedan." Mia's heart began to race. "Is it Ramirez?" "Can't tell. The windows are tinted." Ethan stepped back from the curtain. "But he said he'd call before coming back." As if in response to their whispered exchange, Bruno appeared in the living room doorway, his body rigid with alertness, a low growl building in his throat. Behind him, Noah stood in his pajamas, his eyes wide with fear. "Bruno says it's not the detective," he whispered urgently. "It's someone bad." The growl from Bruno's throat grew more pronounced, a sound of warning and threat that raised the hair on the back of Mia's neck. This was not the gentle, patient creature who had licked Noah's hand and accepted their care. This was a trained police dog sensing danger, preparing to defend. "Get Noah into the bathroom," Ethan instructed Mia, his voice low and controlled, despite the fear evident in his eyes. "It's the most secure room, no windows. Lock the door and don't come out until I say it's safe." "What about you?" Mia protested, already moving toward Noah. "I'll call for help and keep an eye on whoever's out there," Ethan said, reaching for the landline phone. "Bruno will stay with me." As if understanding, Bruno positioned himself beside Ethan, his body angled toward the front door, muscles tensed and ready. The transformation in the dog was remarkable. Despite his still healing wound and previous weakness, he looked formidable, dangerous even. Mia gathered Noah into her arms and hurried toward the bathroom at the end of the hallway. "It's going to be okay, sweetie," she whispered, though her trembling voice belied her words. "Daddy and Bruno will protect us." "I know," Noah said with that strange adult certainty that had characterized him since Bruno's arrival. "Bruno won't let the bad men hurt us." In the living room, Ethan dialed Ramirez's direct number with shaking fingers, keeping his eyes on the window where the unknown vehicle was still visible in the driveway. "The line's dead," he realized with growing horror, hearing only silence when he put the receiver to his ear. No dial tone, no connection, nothing. Outside, a car door slammed, followed by another. Footsteps crunched on the gravel walkway. Bruno's growl deepened, his body lowering into a protective stance. Ethan abandoned the useless phone and looked around frantically for anything that could serve as a weapon. The safe house, designed to be secure but not dangerous, offered little in the way of defensive tools. He grabbed a heavy lamp from a side table, unplugging it and holding it like a club. "Bruno," he whispered, feeling slightly ridiculous for addressing the dog as if he were a fellow defender. "We need to buy time for Mia and Noah. Can you do that?" Bruno's eyes flickered toward him briefly, intelligent, understanding, before returning to the front door, where a shadow was now visible through the frosted glass panel. The doorknob turned slowly, testing, not yet forcing. When it didn't yield, there was a pause, then a soft clicking sound that Ethan recognized with rising dread as someone picking the lock. So much for the secure safe house. He positioned himself behind the door, lamp raised, ready to strike whoever entered. Bruno remained in full view, his warning growl now a continuous menacing sound that filled the small living room. The lock clicked again, and the door began to swing open. Ethan tensed, preparing to bring the lamp down on the intruder's head. But before the door opened fully, Bruno launched himself forward with explosive speed, a blur of fur and fury. There was a startled shout from outside, followed by the sound of someone falling heavily. Ethan rushed forward, lamp still raised, to find a man sprawled on the front step, Bruno standing over him with teeth bared, poised to attack if the intruder made any move to rise. A second man stood frozen a few feet away, his hand reaching inside his jacket. For a weapon, Ethan assumed with a sick feeling. "Call him off!" the fallen man gasped, his eyes fixed on Bruno's gleaming fangs mere inches from his throat. "Call off your dog!" "Don't move," Ethan commanded, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Either of you, or I'll let him bite." It was a bluff. He had no idea if Bruno would actually attack, wounded as he was. But the two men seemed to believe it, remaining perfectly still. In the distance, Ethan heard the welcome sound of sirens approaching rapidly. "Police!" the second man said suddenly, slowly withdrawing a badge from inside his jacket. "We're police officers. We were sent to check on the family." Ethan felt a moment of uncertainty. Could they be legitimate? But Bruno's continued growling and the memory of Noah's warning about corrupt police officers kept him wary. "Then you won't mind waiting for your colleagues to arrive," he said firmly, gesturing with the lamp toward the approaching sirens. "Bruno, stay." The dog held his position, not relaxing his guard for a moment, despite the man's claim to be police. The standoff continued for what felt like an eternity, but was probably less than a minute, until two police cruisers screeched into the driveway, lights flashing. Detective Ramirez was the first to emerge, gun drawn, taking in the scene with professional alertness. "Parker," he called. "You okay?" "These men broke in," Ethan explained, still keeping his distance. "They claim they're police." Ramirez approached cautiously, examining the badge the standing man was still holding out. His expression hardened. "Officer Miller," he said, his voice cold. "Funny, I don't recall assigning you to this detail." "Chief sent us," the man replied, his posture tense but controlled. "Said the family might be in danger, needed extra protection." "The chief," Ramirez repeated flatly. "And yet, no one informed me, the detective in charge of this case." His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Let me see your service weapon, Miller." Slowly, the man hesitated, then very carefully reached for his gun with two fingers, holding it out for inspection. Ramirez took it, checked the chamber, and handed it to one of the uniformed officers who had joined him. "Now yours, Delaney," he instructed the man, still pinned by Bruno's threatening presence. Carefully, the prone officer complied, moving with exaggerated slowness under Bruno's watchful gaze. His weapon was similarly confiscated and checked. "Both loaded," Ramirez noted, his voice hardening further. "Care to explain why you came to check on a protected family with loaded weapons and by picking the lock?" Neither man answered, their expressions now carefully blank. "Get them in separate cars," Ramirez ordered the uniformed officers. "Full search, no communication between them. And call for backup. I want this scene secured properly." Only when both men had been handcuffed and placed in separate police cruisers did Ramirez turn to Ethan. "Where are Mia and Noah?" "Bathroom, hidden." Ethan was suddenly aware of how badly he was shaking, now that the immediate danger had passed. "Bruno warned us. Noah said, he said the men were bad, not police." Ramirez's expression was grim but unsurprised. "We need to get you all out of here. This location is clearly compromised." He looked down at Bruno, who had finally relaxed his defensive posture and was now sitting calmly, though still alert. "Good boy," he said softly. "You did good." Bruno acknowledged the praise with a slight wag of his tail, but his eyes remained fixed on the police cruisers where the two intruders sat. Ethan went to retrieve Mia and Noah from their hiding place, knocking on the bathroom door with a specific pattern they had agreed upon. "It's safe now," he called. "Ramirez is here." The door opened to reveal Mia, pale but composed, with Noah clutched tightly in her arms. The boy immediately looked around for Bruno, his face lighting up with relief when he spotted the dog. "Bruno!" he cried, squirming out of his mother's grasp and running to throw his arms around the German shepherd's neck. "You were so brave." Bruno accepted the embrace with dignified patience, giving Noah's cheek a gentle lick that made the boy giggle despite the trauma of the night. Ramirez quickly explained the situation to Mia. "We need to move you to a new location, somewhere those men won't know about." He glanced at his watch. "My team is securing a place now. We'll leave as soon as it's ready." "Those men," Mia said, her voice shaking slightly. Were they really police officers? Ramirez nodded grimly. Yes, but their story about being sent to protect you doesn't add up. No one outside my direct team was supposed to know you were here. He hesitated, then added, Noah's warning about a corrupt officer, especially one called Chief, is looking more credible by the minute. While they waited for word on the new safe house, Ramirez updated them on the investigation. The data recovered from Daniel Reed's phone had already yielded valuable information, names, dates, locations related to the trafficking operation. But it had also contained something more disturbing, evidence of police involvement in protecting the traffickers. Dan was building a case, Ramirez explained quietly, keeping his voice low so Noah, who was sitting with Bruno across the room, couldn't hear. Not just against the traffickers, but against whoever in the department was helping them. From what we can tell, he was getting close to identifying someone high up, possibly as high as a division chief. The man with the scar, Ethan said. The one Noah described. Ramirez nodded. There are several division chiefs in our department. One of them, Thomas Mercer, has a scar on his right cheek from an old knife wound. He's well respected, decorated multiple times for bravery. But, he shrugged. Dan was thorough. If he suspected Mercer, he had good reason. And now Mercer knows you're investigating him, Mia said, the implication settling like a cold weight in her stomach. Because of Bruno. Because of what Noah has been telling you. We've been careful, Ramirez assured her. Only my most trusted officers know the details of what Noah has revealed. But yes, it's possible Mercer has figured out that we're closing in, hence tonight's visitors. The phone rang, making them all jump. Ramirez answered it, spoke briefly, then hung up with a nod of satisfaction. New location is ready, he announced. We move now. The transfer to the new safe house was conducted with even greater precaution than the first. They were moved in an unmarked van with tinted windows, taking a circuitous route that involved switching vehicles twice. Bruno stayed close to Noah throughout the journey, his body positioned protectively between the boy and the doors, as if ready to intercept any threat. The new location was a small apartment above a closed restaurant in a different part of the city. The entrance was through a back alley, the stairs narrow and steep, difficult to approach without being seen from several vantage points. Ramirez personally checked every room, every window, every potential entry point before allowing the family to settle in. Only 3 people know you're here, he told them. Me, Martinez, and the chief of detectives, who reports directly to the commissioner, not to Mercer. There will be 2 officers on guard at all times, both vetted personally by me. It was nearly midnight by the time the Parkers were alone again, exhausted but too wired to sleep. Noah had finally succumbed to fatigue, curled up on a small daybed with Bruno maintaining his vigilant position on the floor beside him. How did this become our life? Mia whispered to Ethan as they sat at the kitchen table, cups of cooling tea in front of them. 3 days ago, we were normal people with normal problems. Ethan reached across the table to squeeze her hand. We're still us, he said, just caught up in something bigger than ourselves. But we'll get through it. Bruno will help us. Mia smiled weakly at that. It's strange how much I believe that now, that a dog we found half dead in our backyard is somehow the key to our survival. She glanced toward the room where Noah slept. What do you think is happening between them, Noah and Bruno? Ethan shook his head slowly. I don't know. Maybe it's something science can't explain, or maybe it's just the pure connection between a boy and a dog, amplified by extraordinary circumstances. He shrugged. Does it matter? It's real, whatever it is. And it's helping to bring down criminals who hurt innocent people. Morning would bring new challenges, new dangers, as Ramirez and his team moved to act on the information from Daniel Reed's phone. But for now, in the quiet of the midnight hour, there was a strange peace in accepting the unexplainable bond between Noah and Bruno, and the role they had been called to play in a drama much larger than themselves. In the darkness, Mia could just make out Bruno's silhouette, his head raised alertly at some sound too faint for human ears, watching, guarding, protecting what had somehow become his family. What's the most unexplainable connection you've ever experienced with someone or something? Was it coincidence or something more? Dawn arrived with pale fingers of light creeping through the blinds of the small apartment. Mia woke with a start, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings, until the events of the previous night came rushing back. The break-in, Bruno's defense, the hasty relocation to this new hiding place. She pushed herself up from the uncomfortable futon, where she and Ethan had eventually fallen into fitful sleep, careful not to wake her husband. Her first instinct was to check on Noah, and she padded quietly to the small room where he had been sleeping. The door was ajar, and through the gap, she could see Noah sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Bruno. They were face to face, the boy's small hands resting gently on either side of the dog's head, their foreheads nearly touching. There was something so intimate, so profound about the tableau that Mia hesitated to interrupt, feeling almost like an intruder on a private conversation, which, she realized with a jolt, was exactly what it was. Noah and Bruno were communicating in their mysterious way, sharing thoughts or images or whatever strange connection had formed between them. She must have made some small sound because Bruno's ears suddenly twitched and his amber eyes shifted to the doorway where she stood. Noah turned a moment later, his face solemn but not startled. "Good morning, Mommy," he said quietly. "Morning, sweetie," Mia replied, pushing the door open fully. "What are you and Bruno talking about so early?" Noah stroked Bruno's head, his expression thoughtful beyond his years. "He's telling me about today," he said simply. "About what might happen." A chill ran down Mia's spine, despite the warmth of the small apartment. What might happen? Noah's brow furrowed in concentration. The police are going to try to catch the bad men today. The ones who hurt Bruno's person and the people in cages. He looked up at his mother, his eyes wide and serious. "Bruno is worried. He says the bad police chief will try to stop them." Mia knelt beside her son, fighting to keep her expression calm, despite the fear blooming in her chest. "Did Bruno say how the chief might try to stop them?" Noah nodded solemnly. "By hurting more people. Bruno says he's very scared and angry now because he knows they found the phone." Before Mia could process this disturbing information, there was a knock at the apartment's main door. Bruno was instantly alert, moving in front of Noah with practiced precision, but his posture remained relatively relaxed, a warning rather than an alarm. Ethan appeared in the hallway, his hair disheveled from sleep, but his eyes sharp with vigilance. "I'll check," he said quietly, moving toward the door with cautious steps. Through the peephole, he saw Detective Ramirez and Officer Martinez standing in the narrow hallway outside. He opened the door just enough to confirm their identities before letting them in. "Sorry for the early call," Ramirez said, his face drawn with fatigue that suggested he hadn't slept at all. "But things are moving fast. We're executing search warrants this morning based on the information from Reed's phone, multiple locations, including a property owned by a shell company that we've linked to Chief Mercer." "You found proof of his involvement?" Ethan asked, leading the officers into the small living area. Ramirez nodded grimly. "Enough to convince a judge to sign the warrants. Reed had collected bank records, surveillance photos, even recorded conversations. He was building an airtight case." Martinez knelt to greet Bruno, who had emerged from Noah's room with the boy close behind him. "How's our hero this morning?" he asked, carefully examining the healing wound on the dog's side. "Looking stronger every day?" Bruno accepted the attention with dignified patience, but his eyes remained alert, constantly scanning between the officers and the door, as if assessing potential threats. "Noah says Bruno is worried about today," Mia said, deciding to be direct about her son's latest message. "He thinks Chief Mercer will try to interfere with your operation." If Ramirez was surprised by this, he didn't show it. After the events of the past few days, perhaps nothing seemed too strange anymore. "We've considered that possibility," he said carefully. "Mercer has been called to an emergency meeting with the commissioner this morning, ostensibly about budget issues. It should keep him occupied and away from the raids." "But what if he suspects something?" Ethan pressed. "What if he doesn't go to the meeting?" Ramirez and Martinez exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Then we have a contingency plan," Martinez said finally. "But the less you know about the details, the safer you'll be." The underlying message was clear. The situation remained dangerous, and the less the Parker family knew about police operations, the less they could reveal if somehow captured or questioned. "What about us?" Mia asked, automatically drawing Noah closer to her side. "How long do we need to stay in hiding?" "With luck, just until the raids are complete," Ramirez answered. "If we get the evidence we expect to find and take Mercer into custody, the immediate threat should be neutralized. But until then," he shrugged apologetically, "we need you to stay put. All of you." His gaze included Bruno in the directive. After ensuring the family had everything they needed and reviewing security protocols once more, Ramirez and Martinez prepared to leave. The raids were scheduled to begin at 9 a.m., coordinated across multiple locations. "We'll have officers watching this building constantly," Ramirez assured them at the door. "If anything feels wrong, anything at all, use the panic button." He pointed to a small device they had installed near the door, designed to send an immediate alert to the nearest patrol units. After the officers left, the Parker family settled into an anxious waiting game. There was nothing to do but try to occupy themselves while the police operation unfolded elsewhere in the city. Ethan found a deck of cards in a kitchen drawer and tried to teach Noah how to play Go Fish, but the boy was distracted, frequently looking to Bruno as if receiving updates on some invisible frequency. "What is Bruno telling you, sweetheart?" Mia asked gently, after Noah had glanced at the dog for perhaps the 20th time in an hour. Noah's face scrunched in concentration. "He's trying to listen," the boy explained, "to what's happening with the police, but it's hard because it's far away." It was such a strange concept, a dog somehow remotely monitoring police activities, that Mia might have smiled if not for the deadly seriousness of the situation. Instead, she simply nodded, accepting her son's explanation as she had come to accept so many impossible things over the past 4 days. The morning crept by with excruciating slowness. By noon, they still hadn't heard from Ramirez, which Ethan tried to interpret as a good sign. "No news is good news," he said, though his frequent glances at his silent phone belied his forced optimism. It was just after 1 p.m. when Bruno suddenly stiffened, a low growl building in his throat. The sound had become all too familiar over the past days, a warning of approaching danger. Noah immediately moved closer to the dog, placing a small hand on his back. "Bruno says someone is coming," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Someone he doesn't know." Ethan moved to the window, carefully peering through a tiny gap in the blinds. The alley below appeared empty at first glance, but then he caught a flicker of movement, a shadow detaching itself from the deeper shadows of a recessed doorway across the way. "There's someone down there," he confirmed, his voice dropping to a whisper, though there was no possibility of being overheard from the street. "Watching the building." Mia's heart began to race. Could it be one of Ramirez's officers? "Maybe," Ethan said, though he didn't sound convinced. "But why would they be hiding like that?" Bruno's growl deepened, and Noah's eyes widened with alarm. "Bruno says it's a bad person," he whispered urgently. "They found us again." Mia looked around frantically, assessing their options. The apartment had only one door, and the windows were too small for an adult to climb through, a security feature that now felt like a trap. "The panic button," she said, moving toward the device near the door. But before she could reach it, Bruno barked sharply, once, twice, then positioned himself in front of the door, his body rigid with alertness. "Someone's coming up the stairs," Noah translated unnecessarily, the fear in his voice evident. "Bruno says to hide, quick." Ethan made a split-second decision. "Bathroom," he said, grabbing Noah and pushing him toward Mia. "Lock yourselves in. Use the panic button from your phone." Each of their cells had been programmed with the emergency alert function as a backup. "What about you?" Mia protested, even as she backed toward the bathroom with Noah. "I'll stay with Bruno," Ethan said grimly, looking around for anything that could serve as a weapon. "Buy you time if it comes to that." There was no time to argue. Footsteps were already audible on the stairs outside, heavy, deliberate, making no attempt at stealth. Whoever was coming wasn't trying to surprise them. The realization was somehow more terrifying than if they had been attempting a silent approach. Mia pulled Noah into the bathroom, locking the door behind them and immediately activating the panic alert on her phone. The screen confirmed the signal had been sent, but how long would it take for help to arrive, and what would happen in the meantime? Through the door, she could hear Bruno's continuous growling, a sound of warning and threat. Then came a heavy knock on the apartment door, 3 sharp raps that seemed to echo in the confined space. "Police!" called a deep voice from the hallway. "Open up!" Mia held her breath, clutching Noah tightly against her. There was a moment of silence, then Ethan's voice, steadier than she would have expected. "Show your identification through the peephole." Another pause, then, "Don't waste my time, Mr. Parker. I know you're in there with the dog and the boy. Open the door now, or I'll open it for you." The voice was cold, authoritative, used to being obeyed without question. And there was something else in it, a barely contained fury that made Mia's blood run cold. "Bruno says it's him," Noah whispered, his face buried against her shoulder. "The bad police chief, the one with the scar, Mercer." Somehow he had found them, despite all Ramirez's precautions, which meant either their location had been leaked by someone in the department or... "The raids," Mia gasped, sudden understanding washing over her. Ramirez said Mercer was supposed to be in a meeting during the raids, but he must have realized it was a diversion, and now he's here. Outside the bathroom, she heard the sound of splintering wood as the apartment door was forced open. Bruno's growl exploded into frenzied barking, followed by a shout from Ethan, and then a sound that turned Mia's blood to ice. A gunshot, deafeningly loud in the confined space of the small apartment. Noah screamed, a sound of pure terror that tore at Mia's heart. She held him tighter, her mind racing desperately for some way to protect her son from what was happening beyond the bathroom door. There was a scuffling sound, more shouting. Ethan's voice raised in anger or pain, Mia couldn't tell, and then another voice, colder and more controlled. "Call off your dog, Parker, or I'll put him down just like I did his former owner." The admission of murder, so casually stated, confirmed every suspicion about Chief Mercer's corruption and violence. He had killed Daniel Reed, and now he had come to eliminate the witnesses who could connect him to the crime. "Bruno, stop!" Ethan's voice, strained but commanding. The barking ceased, replaced by a low, continuous growl. "What do you want, Mercer?" "The raids are already happening. It's over." A harsh laugh from the chief. "Hardly. My associates are being warned as we speak. Your detective friend's operation will find nothing but empty buildings." A pause, then more ominously. "But you're right about one thing. It is over for you and your family." In the bathroom, Mia frantically looked around for anything that could serve as a weapon or a means of escape. The window was too small even for Noah to fit through, and the only potential weapons were a plunger and a bottle of shower cleaner. She grabbed the cleaner anyway, holding it like a club, though she knew it would be useless against a gun. "The police are on their way," she heard Ethan say, his voice steadier now. "You can't kill all of us and get away with it." "I don't need to kill all of you," Mercer replied, his tone almost conversational. "Just the dog and the boy, the mysterious psychic connection that's been feeding Ramirez information about my operation." His voice hardened. "Where is he? Where's the boy?" Mia's heart nearly stopped. Mercer was after Noah specifically. Somehow he had learned about Noah's connection with Bruno, about the information the boy had been providing to the police. "Leave my son out of this," Ethan's voice tight with barely controlled rage. "He's just a child." "A child who somehow knows things he shouldn't," Mercer countered. "Things only that damn dog could have seen. I don't know how it works, and I don't care, but it ends now." Heavy footsteps approached the bathroom door. Mia backed away, pushing Noah behind her, the bottle of cleaner clutched uselessly in her shaking hand. "I know you're in there, Mrs. Parker," Mercer called, his voice falsely pleasant. "You and the boy, open the door now, and I'll make this quick and painless. Make me break it down, and it won't be so merciful." Noah clung to Mia's legs, trembling with terror. "Mommy," he whispered, "Bruno says help is coming. We just need to wait." The reassurance delivered in her son's quavering voice gave Mia a sudden surge of determination. If Bruno believed help was on the way, she had to buy time. "Chief Mercer," she called, trying to keep her voice steady, "you're making a mistake. My son doesn't know anything. He's just a little boy with an active imagination." "Don't insult my intelligence, Mrs. Parker," Mercer replied, his false pleasantness evaporating. "Your son has been feeding Ramirez information that only someone who witnessed Reed's murder could know. Information that dog somehow transferred to him." A heavy thud against the door made her jump. "Last chance. Open up." Mia looked down at Noah, her mind racing. If help was truly on the way, every second they could delay might save their lives. "Okay," she called, injecting a note of defeat into her voice. "Please don't hurt my son. I'm opening the door." She made a show of fumbling with the lock, deliberately taking as long as possible, whispering reassurances to Noah all the while. "It's going to be okay, sweetie. Bruno says help is coming. We just need to be brave a little longer." Outside, she could hear Mercer's impatient breathing, punctuated by an occasional grunt from Ethan. Injured, perhaps, but alive. And somewhere beyond, the faint but growing sound of sirens. The bathroom door burst open before Mia could finish her deliberate fumbling with the lock. Chief Mercer stood in the doorway, an imposing figure in plain clothes, a gun held casually at his side. A jagged scar ran down his right cheek, exactly as Noah had described. Behind him, Mia could see Ethan on the floor, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead, but conscious, his eyes blazing with helpless fury. Bruno stood beside Ethan, tense and alert, but making no move to attack, held back perhaps by Ethan's earlier command or by the threat of the gun. "There you are," Mercer said, his cold eyes fixing on Noah, the little psychic and his miraculous connection to a dog. He shook his head in apparent disbelief. "If I hadn't seen the evidence myself, I'd think Ramirez had lost his mind. But somehow, you knew things, didn't you, boy? Things about warehouses and phones and police chiefs with scars." Noah stared up at him, his small face pale but remarkably composed. "Bruno showed me," he said simply. "He saw what you did to his person, and to the people in cages." A flicker of something, perhaps genuine unease, crossed Mercer's face. "Well, it ends now," he said, raising the gun. "Nothing personal, kid, just business." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Bruno, sensing the imminent threat to Noah, exploded into action despite Ethan's earlier command to stop. He launched himself at Mercer with a ferocity born of protective instinct, a blur of fur and teeth aimed at the hand holding the gun. Mercer fired, the sound deafening in the confined space of the bathroom. But Bruno's attack had spoiled his aim, and the bullet embedded itself in the wall beside Mia's head. Before he could fire again, Bruno's jaws clamped around his wrist, forcing the gun from his grasp with a howl of pain. The chief staggered backward, trying to shake off the determined dog, but Bruno held fast, driving him further from Noah and Mia with each backward step. Blood streamed from Mercer's wounded wrist, his face contorted with pain and rage. Ethan, seeing his opportunity, lunged from his position on the floor, tackling Mercer around the knees. The two men and the dog went down in a tangle of limbs and furious motion, Mercer's curses mingling with Bruno's growls and Ethan's determined grunts. The sirens were very close now, wailing urgently outside the building. Feet pounded on the stairs, and then Detective Ramirez's voice rang out, "Police! Freeze!" It was over in seconds after that. Ramirez and two uniformed officers secured Mercer, who lay bleeding and defeated on the apartment floor. Bruno, his mission accomplished, limped back to Noah, who flung his arms around the dog's neck in a desperate embrace. "You did it, Bruno!" the boy sobbed, burying his face in the dog's fur. "You saved us, just like you promised." Mia knelt beside them, gathering both child and dog into her arms, her own tears flowing freely now that the immediate danger had passed. Ethan joined them a moment later, his face bloodied, but his eyes bright with relief and love. "He fought until he knew you were safe," he said softly, stroking Bruno's head with gentle fingers. "Just like a true guardian." Bruno's wound from the confrontation was serious. The bullet had struck him in the shoulder, and though Ramirez immediately called for emergency veterinary services, the amount of blood staining his fur was alarming. The family huddled around him as they waited, Noah refusing to leave his side, even when the paramedics arrived to tend to Ethan's injuries. "Please don't go," Noah whispered, his small hands pressed against Bruno's chest, where his heartbeat was growing fainter. "We need you. I need you." Bruno's amber eyes, though clouded with pain, remained fixed on the boy's face. There was recognition there, and something more, a deep, abiding affection that transcended the brief time they had known each other. The veterinarian arrived with siren blaring, rushing into the apartment with the emergency equipment. After a quick assessment, her face grew grave. "We need to get him to the clinic immediately," she said. "His injuries are severe, but there's a chance if we operate right away." The journey to the veterinary clinic was a blur of sirens and tears, Noah holding Bruno's paw the entire way, whispering encouragements that only the two of them truly understood. Mia and Ethan could only watch helplessly as their son poured his heart out to the dog who had saved them all. At the clinic, Bruno was rushed into surgery, leaving the Parker family to wait in a sterile reception area, clinging to each other for comfort. Ramirez joined them shortly after, his face drawn with concern, both for Bruno and for the family who had been through so much. "Mercer is in custody," he reported quietly to Ethan and Mia, "and the raids were partially successful. We didn't get everyone, Mercer managed to warn some of his associates, but we rescued 12 victims and seized significant evidence. It's enough to shut down a major part of the trafficking operation and to put Mercer away for life. It was cold comfort while Bruno fought for his life in the operating room, but it meant that his courage and Daniel Reed's sacrifice had not been in vain. Hours passed, each minute stretching into an eternity of worry. Noah refused food or rest, his eyes fixed on the doors leading to the surgical area, waiting for news of his beloved friend. When the veterinarian finally emerged, her surgical mask pulled down below her chin, her expression told them everything before she spoke a word. "We did everything we could," she said gently, kneeling to address Noah directly. Bruno's injuries were too severe. The bullet damaged major blood vessels, and he lost too much blood before we could repair the damage. "I'm so sorry, but he's gone." Noah's face crumpled, a wounded sound escaping his throat that seemed to contain all the grief in the world. "No," he sobbed, "he can't be gone. He came to find us. He came to us because he knew we would love him." Mia gathered her son into her arms, her own tears falling freely as she tried to comfort him through her own grief. "He did find us, sweetheart," she whispered, "and he saved us. He completed his mission?" "Can I see him?" Noah asked through his tears. "Please, I need to say goodbye." The veterinarian nodded, leading them to a quiet room where Bruno lay on a table, his body still and peaceful, the wounds that had taken his life hidden beneath a soft blanket. Noah approached slowly, his small hand reaching out to stroke the German shepherd's head one last time. "Thank you, Bruno," he whispered, his voice breaking, "for finding us, for saving us, for being my friend." He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against Bruno's in a final echo of their mysterious connection. "I'll never forget you." In the days that followed, the Parkers buried Bruno beneath the old oak tree in their backyard, the same yard where he had first appeared to them during the storm, wounded but determined. Noah placed his favorite stuffed dog beside Bruno's grave, a small, poignant tribute from one loyal heart to another. Life slowly began to return to normal, though the experience had changed them all in profound ways. Mia and Ethan watched their son carefully, worried about the impact of the trauma and loss on his young psyche. But while Noah grieved deeply for Bruno, there was a strange peace in him too, as if he had understood and accepted Bruno's sacrifice in a way that went beyond his years. 1 month after Bruno's death, Ramirez invited the family to join him at an animal adoption event hosted by the police department. "No pressure," he assured them. "Just thought it might be healing for all of you." The event was crowded with families and animals, the atmosphere joyful despite the serious purpose. Noah walked quietly between his parents, his expression solemn as he observed the various dogs up for adoption. He showed polite interest, but no real connection to any of them until they reached a pen at the very end of the row. Inside, a tiny German shepherd puppy sat alone, separate from the playful litter of siblings in the adjacent enclosure. His amber eyes, so like Bruno's, followed Noah's approach with an intensity that made Mia catch her breath. "He doesn't interact with anyone," the shelter worker explained apologetically. "He was the runt of the litter, and he's very shy, but he won't stop looking at your son." Noah knelt beside the pen, his finger extended through the mesh. The puppy approached cautiously, sniffing the offered digit before giving it a tentative lick. A smile, the first genuine smile since Bruno's death, spread across Noah's face. "He likes me," he said softly. "Would you like to hold him?" the worker offered, already unlatching the pen door. Noah nodded eagerly, accepting the small bundle of fur with careful hands. The puppy immediately settled against his chest, looking up at him with those eerily familiar amber eyes. "What do you think, sweetie?" Mia asked, watching the obvious bond forming before her eyes. "Would you like to take him home?" Noah didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied the puppy's face intently, as if searching for something. Whatever he found there must have satisfied him, because he looked up at his parents with tears shimmering in his eyes and a smile of pure joy. "Bruno sent him," he said with absolute certainty. "He knew we needed each other." Mia and Ethan exchanged glances, seeing in each other's eyes the same mixture of wonder and acceptance that had characterized their extraordinary journey. Whether Noah's statement was literal truth or the beautiful metaphor of a child processing grief, it didn't matter. What mattered was the healing that was beginning, the continuation of love in a new form. As they completed the adoption paperwork, Noah held the puppy close, whispering promises of adventure and protection into its floppy ears. The tiny German shepherd listened with the solemn attention of a guardian in training, as if already understanding the legacy he was inheriting. Some protectors, it seemed, never truly leave. They simply find new ways to watch over those they love. Has an animal ever protected you or given you comfort when you needed it most? Like, share, comment, and subscribe to hear more heartwarming stories that will restore your faith in the unbreakable bond between humans and animals.